What's good enough on YouTube? This is Crazy Sarah, so I'm here bringing another video. Today I'm bringing a video at Uchuu Sentai Kyuranger episode 13. This episode is called Stinger Challenges His Brother, and it's a pretty good episode. I actually liked it a lot. The title is a little deceiving because it makes you think, oh, he's going to actually fight him in this episode. He doesn't fight him, but it's sort of like meant to hint at the idea that he is getting ready to fight him, and he knows that he is on Earth at this point. How does he know? Well, we'll get to that in this episode, but I wanted to give you guys just that clarification if you're wondering, oh, does that mean that he actually fights? No, he doesn't fight him in this episode, but it does kind of, get things in motion for what will eventually occur, which is great. So anyway, the episode starts off with us seeing a bunch of the people on Earth trying to plead for their labor conditions to become easier, and they're not having to work as many hours as they've been having to work under Dark Matter's command. And they're having to talk to this magistrate known as No Discus, I believe, or No Discus Endeavor, which I don't really, if I'm saying it wrong, sorry, but I just want to bring that up. So what happens is they're pleading or whatever, and he's like, I'll just listen to you guys, but you're gonna have to figure it out on your own. And they're still pleading, and suddenly we end up seeing Scorpio, who is sitting in the bleachers behind all of them, and he's like, this discussion needs violence and anger and torment and all sorts of stuff like that. And suddenly he ends up using his tail and shoots some venom into the magistrate's body, which then infects him and turns him into this zombie. And then he ends up infecting his two other Endeavor, guards with him. And then the people are afraid and they get infected. And then suddenly people outside are already infected. And the whole entire idea is that there's this whole entire attack going on. In the meantime, we see on the Orion that apparently they're discussing Argo regarding regarding the Pupus Kiltima, the Bella and the Serena Kiltima, obviously that they need, and they had the Pupus Kiltima, but as far as getting the other two, the device that they use to get it needs to be recharged in order for them to find the other two. And the thing is that prevents them from really focusing on getting it this episode. So instead of that, we end up then seeing that we end up hearing from Sho that Kotaro is going to be going to go to the rebellion headquarters for now on temporary leave. This is probably due to them, and this is like real life I'm talking about, not like show based, but in real life what this is probably has to do with is the fact that you remember he is a kid, and this is probably their way of saying, he's a kid, he probably has school and there's other things going on, and so this is a way for them to kind of let him go for maybe a few episodes and then bring him back. Could that be like 2 episodes, 3 episodes? Yes, maybe it will be maybe 5 or 10. We don't know. So don't necessarily expect anything, but just something to be aware of. So I just wanted to make sure you guys are clear on what it is, and it's probably also smart that way. It's not just like, oh, he just suddenly disappeared. Like there's an actual explanation, but he still is in this episode, and he stays in this episode. So after this one, he'll be gone for, I don't know, an episode, 2, 3, if not a little bit more. We'll see. But I wanted to just make it a little bit, I want to make it clear for those that are curious. So what then ends up happening is that they end up finding out that there's an attack going on. They want to use the QLED to start their mission, and they end up using it, and the people that are chosen are Lucky, Hammy, Sho, Champ, and Stinger. Champ's sort of like, why should I work with this guy? He's talking about Stinger, of course, because obviously he has this vendetta against him because he believes that Stinger actually killed Professor Anton, because he still annoyed at him about that, and he thinks that that's the case. So what ends up happening is that they still have to deal with it, and they go down to Earth, where they end up finding out that there are these zombie magistrates and humans that are attacking. And the thing is that they're sort of like, why is this happening? And they still have to fight. Eventually, though, Hammy is infected by the virus that was from this venom or whatever, that leads to her becoming like one of these zombies. And the thing is that Champ ends up using the Ares Kiltima to put her to sleep, and then eventually Stinger ends up using the Scatum Gyotama to create a barrier wall so that they can retreat temporarily to deal with her being a zombie. So what ends up happening is they end up retreating to this building where they end up having her on a table, and Stinger ends up giving using an antidote to bring her back to a normal state. And so it kind of clarifies something that he knows what the virus is, and that's because it's a virus that's been made by Stinger's brother Scorpio, and so he realizes this, and he can recognize it very quickly. So because of this, we end up learning about a bit about Scorpio and about and a little bit more about what actually happened to Professor Anton. So we'll get into that now. What ends up happening is that Scorpio ended up betraying Stinger's race or whatever. And the thing is that he ended up joining Dark Matter and becoming their top assassin. And we end up seeing a clip of how Don Armage ended up giving him extra power and made him the lead assassin of Dark Matter. And we saw how he was transformed and turned into this monster form rather than staying human. And also that the face piece is really just a mask that he puts on him, but the clothing, the actual monster look is separate. So that is interesting to note. We don't really know exactly how it's going to work in the end. We didn't actually get to see the rest of his body. We only get to see the rest of his body, not his face change. So we don't actually know what he looks like without the mask on, which will be very interesting. I'm sure at some point where more likely than not Stinger will probably break off the mask or whatever. We'll have to wait and see if that's the case, but I would imagine something like that will occur. But we also end up learning about the fact that apparently Stinger ended up seeing from a distance away that the one who actually had killed Professor Anton, Champ's creator, was actually Scorpio's brother, and he actually saw it, and he feels that it was his, he's a like it was both Scorpio's crime and Stinger's crime, because he kind of treats his brother's crimes as his own because he values his brother so much, even though he hates him for everything he's been doing. So the thing is that this kind of makes Champ say, like, well, why didn't you tell me this to begin with? And he's like, well, would it really matter? And at the same time, kind of brought up this kind of curiosity and kind of confusion, like why wouldn't he just tell him and make it so that they could kind of work together. And in some ways it's kind of nicer because it builds up this resistance, but then it builds up this kind of understanding and mutual respect for hatred towards a common enemy, which is nice. We'll get into that at the end where I wrap this up, but let's keep going here. So what ends up happening is that we end up seeing that Scorpio says he's gonna Stinger's gonna go and deal with his brother. At the same time, Champ's like, I want to still deal with him or whatever. And we have to remember that the other Kyurangers return as well, and they try to discuss everything, and they end up having to deal with the zombies. So what ends up happening is that they split up into small groups, but they can't completely split up because they don't want anyone to get infected or anything. So that's why they kind of have to stay in mini groups. So what ends up happening is, for example, Hammy and Spada end up dealing with a bunch of them and bringing them to a safe area. And then you have I believe Balance, Nagare, and Garu dealing with another bunch of them. And Balance, since he's a machine that has all sorts of crazy abilities, he's able to launch tons and tons of antidotes at the infected people. In the meantime, we end up seeing that initially Stinger is dealing with a bunch on his own, using his tail to just kind of quickly insert the antidotes into all their bodies. In the meantime, we end up also seeing that Kotsuro shows up and tries to talk to Stinger, and talks about well, didn't you say you wanted to make your brother proud, and don't you still value him or whatever? And it kind of makes Stinger think about things, because you have to remember that they have this deeper connection about this whole entire brother aspect, because sure, Jiro, Kotsuro's little brother, he's not someone that looks evil or anything, but the idea is that he wants the idea is that Stinger wants Kotaro to become someone that Jiro could be proud of, and not become like Scorpio. And at the same time, Stinger wants to do right and by his brother and bring him back from the darkness, bring him out of the darkness or whatever. And so what ends up happening is they end up discussing things, and eventually we end up also seeing that Sho, Lucky, and Champ have also been doing a bunch of the infected, and we end up hearing from Sho about how Stinger ended up joining the Kyurangers, and how he was initially the first Kyuranger that Sho found, and how when he found him, he was searching all around trying to take out his brother. And the thing is that he would come into different buildings in his garb or whatever, and he would attack and be very vicious, and have a sense of anger and complete hatred, and just primarily focus on his brother. Thing is that eventually Sho ends up confronting him, and Sho offers him the ability of it says, do you want to fight dark matter and protect the world or whatever, or protect the universe or whatever, and he accepts it, and then he becomes the longest lasting one, and he still pursues him apparently, but he pursues him in a much more calmer way than he had when Sho had met him. And so that's kind of an interesting thing to note. So what ends up happening is that they then Champ ends up learning this, and he feels really bad because he's been hating on him, and he didn't realize how much he really wanted to deal with it, how much he really hated his brother, and how they really are similar in that way of having this hatred, and so Champ ends up joining up with Stinger, and he's like, he talks to Stinger about we should be partners, we should work together here, we have a common enemy, and he's like, if that's what you want to do, I'm willing to, it's all right, do as you must, that's sort of his attitude towards most things. And so what happens is that they end up becoming like a tag team and dealing with several Magistrates and endeavors or whatever, and eventually we have Kotaro, Lucky, Sho, Champ, and Stinger all transform and end up fighting the endeavors and the Magistrates, and Stinger and Champ end up actually saying the same thing at the same time a bunch of times, and it just sort of hints at this whole entire aspect of them being partners, which is just so awesome. And because it's like you have these two awesome characters, and suddenly they're like partners, and it's just like, yes. At least in my opinion, I really, really like their partnership, because they're both really powerful characters and very cool characters, so it's very nice to see them kind of working together in some way. So this then continues with them fighting, and they end up using an all-star finisher, and between the five of them, and then they end up Stinger, Sho, and Kotaro end up using Ryoteo, and the thing is that the Magistrate still, even when he's turned big, is still a zombie, and he ends up shooting out the venom and trying to attack them. So the thing is that they need to avoid getting attacked, and so Kotaro ends up releasing Ursa Minor from the Ursa Minor Major combination or whatever, and tries to attack him. In the meantime, we end up then seeing that Lucky returns with Kurano, with the other five Kyurangers, and they make up the combination, and they then combine to make Ryute Kurano, which is the combined mode that we saw in the previous episode. And so they then end up using that combination to attack. I forgot to also mention that in the meantime, this whole entire time, that Scorpio had been watching all this, trying to understand how his brother has changed, how much he has grown. And so there's that whole entire aspect of that as well, that he is trying to learn about his brother. And then we end up seeing one of the lower level Magistrates, not the Endeavor, but one of the stronger general ones that are like the Magistrates or whatever, show up in front of Scorpio, and Scorpio in one kick basically knocks him into the wall, and creates this whole entire like void of space that and creates this whole entire pattern that's like his symbol or whatever. And it's just like, wow. And you have to think about something for a second here. One kick compared to them having to fight with major teams, that's insane. So yeah, he's really powerful, Scorpio. So from there we end up seeing them back on the Orion, basically doing a whole goodbye, like a little goodbye party to Kotaro for his temporary leave. And what ends up happening is that, you know, shows like I'm not very good with words, but I think I'll sing. And the thing is that rather than singing, he just kind of does some other things, and they just kind of party. Then we end up seeing Stinger and Champ together, and it seems like they're going after Scorpio. So this is what it kind of connects to with the whole entire story idea, with the whole entire name of the episode, where Stinger challenges his brother, sort of like leading up to him going to actually go after his brother. Now that basically more or less implies, unless they somehow decide to not do this, is that like Stinger, Champ, and Kotaro will not be in the next episode. So that means 8 of them will still be left over, which means that they can still do stuff, but it'll be interesting to see how it's going to work out. Now, I don't know for a fact if necessarily this is just one episode and then they'll like return to the Orion next episode, but at least it sounds like they're going on their own trip, and we end up seeing them together, and like Champ's like, oh yes, come on partner, we have to do this together, and he's like, why are you acting this way, like Stinger says, and he's just like, come on, I'm setting the tone so that we can get along and, you know, become like partners and work together and everything. And so he's like, do as you must, and he kept on going like 1, 2, he goes like each niece, each niece son, Mo, or whatever. And the thing is that like Stinger doesn't respond or whatever, and doesn't repeat it, and he's not as cheery. That's unfortunate because Stinger is supposed to be a cheery person, obviously, but you know, he has to deal with his brother and all that kind of stuff. But it's just interesting to see that kind of relationship and how they are beginning to work together, and it's very nice because those two characters are very, very cool. Stinger especially is a character that we've seen a lot of development with, and Champ is a character that has an important story with the professor, so it's nice to see them finally being a united force. So it'll be very nice. And the other thing to mention is that even though they don't show up at Kotaro's party, Kotaro mentions the fact that it's like, I trust Stinger and he trusts me, and that's all that matters, and I don't mind that he's not here for my going away party, because I know that he'll do right for his brother and for me. And so it's just sort of like this very smart thing. So overall, I really like this episode. Really good episode, clean idea. As far as things go with the next episode, it does look like the next one will be more of like, I wouldn't say filler, but definitely a much more less serious episode compared to the past 13 or so, which have been, for the most part, pretty serious. I mean, the one exception would maybe be like the episode, the Pegasus Kyotama episode, which was still serious, and it's actually still important, but it was definitely a little bit lighthearted. But this one definitely looks like it's going to be a little bit more goofy. I wouldn't say like straight up, silly, like ridiculous episode, but definitely much more goofy and off the wall, I guess you could say. But it still looks like it's going to be a good episode. Apparently they're going to be going to some palace and dealing with stopping some operation that Dark Matter is putting out. So it'll be very interesting to see how that works out. It also seems like Ryotei Kirino is going to be a regular thing now, which is interesting, and we'll see how that goes from there. But overall, I really am liking the show. I love to know your guys' opinions. Are you guys enjoying Uchuu Sentai Kyuranger? Which character is your favorite? What do you think of the story so far? Do you think that Scorpio is a pretty cool villain, or when do you think we'll finally get to see Don Armage out of the void and actually see him as he is? Do you think that will be like maybe 20 or so episodes later, or do you think it will be kind of soon? I'd love to know, because I'm personally expecting it to be probably the next 10 or 15 episodes or so, like around 30 or so, or late 20s. that we'll finally get to see what he looks like for real. But I'm enjoying the show. I can't wait to see how this show is going to keep on going, and see how eventually Stinger will confront his brother, and whether or not his brother will join them on the side of good, and whether or not that means that he will actually become a Kyuranger, maybe become Ho-Ho Soldier, or someone else. Don't know anything for sure now, but I'd love to know your guys' opinions. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and remember, guys, and that's about it for me. So please remember. So see you guys in the next video, and check my Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And goodbye, guys.